Hey YouTube, 3D Printed Life here, and today is going to be the review of the initial TronXY X5s. This 3D printer was sent to me by GearBest, so if you're interested in purchasing one, I have a link down below, but they did not pay me for this review other than sending me the printer, so this is entirely my opinion on the printer. But overall, it's a very capable machine, and I'll just go over all of the good and bad stuff about it, because there are certainly quite a few quirks, and there's quite a few things that can be improved, but you have to put a little work in yourself. So let's jump right in. The printer costs about $280, and for that you get a Core XY printer with a dual Z-screw Z-axis, a print area of 330 by 330 by 400 millimeters, so it is enormous. You also get an LCD for controlling it. You do not get the lighting, I'll talk about that. But you get a pretty nice hot end extruder and the cable chain and everything you see here. For 280 bucks, it's a steal. When you get the kit, it comes partially assembled. You get the hot end an extruder carriage fully assembled. You get like the quarter idlers assembled. You get the Y slider idlers assembled. You get the Z-bed all soldered, wired up, the cable chain already wrapped through, so assembling is super easy and super quick. It took me about 4 hours or so to get the mechanical side of this guy up and running. Getting it wired was pretty quick. For the most part, it's just plug and play. All the wires are long enough that you can very easily do cable management going all the way around. Makes it super simple. The Z-axis, like I said, is a dual Z-screw, and it is super rigid. On top of that, printing, as you can tell by this video, is pretty quiet. Really the only noise you hear is from the stepper motors and from the power supply and the hot end fan right there. Now, this hot end fan does have a resistor on it. Basically, I cut its current in half, so it'd be making half as much noise, because as it was pretty much overkill. No reason not to dial it down a bit. And then the last of the super good stuff is that not only do you get the LCD and all that included, so controlling your printer is super simple, but also it comes with this BuildTak-like surface to go around the bed, and that covers the full 330 millimeter squared build area. And it does work just like BuildTak. It is just as sticky as BuildTak, so it's very nice, and it's going to greatly minimize warping. Now some of the not so good stuff. First of all, the Z-axis is very rigid but slow. It moves at 4 millimeters per second up and down, which is not that great. The Y gantry has a little bit of play back and forth. It's not too bad, but it's noticeable. The extruder and hot end overall could be improved. They do work pretty nice, except the extruder kind of struggles a bit once you get printing over around, say, 80 millimeters per second at fairly high layer heights. The heated bed is super underpowered, and the only reason this is in the mass section and not the bad section is because it actually does come with a heated bed for 280 bucks, and it's a 300 by 300 PCB heated bed on an 1/8 inch aluminum plate. Not bad at all, but it's only got about 100 watts of power, and thus it's not really good for anything besides, say, PLA. It takes about 10 minutes to hit 60 degrees Celsius, which is a pretty long time. As I mentioned before, the fans are pretty noisy, especially the fan on the hot end. However, that's pretty easy to dial back the noise. I'll be talking about all this stuff because I'll be doing an upgrades video later on, and all the upgrades that I did to this guy in order to get it where it will be. A big negative for me is that there was no lighting included. Now, as you can see, there is lighting, but that is a LED strip that I added pretty much for the purposes of this video, because I do like to have lights on my 3D printer. It's kind of hard to film without it. Now, the print quality is good. I will show some demos, of course, but unfortunately it's not the fastest. Like I mentioned before, the extruder struggles at over 80 millimeters a second, so most of the prints that I do are around 60 millimeters a second, which isn't terrible, but it is pretty slow, especially by modern standards. However, considering you're getting such a large build volume and the printer is so cheap, I'd say that's a fairly acceptable trade-off, and that's something that can easily be improved with a better extruder and hot end combo. And then the final not so good point is that these idlers are in fact just metal washers that are actually stationary with bearings inside them. Not really great. They do work, but not the best. Now finally the bad stuff. Luckily this list is super small, but they're kind of bad things. Now first of all, the Core XY mechanics are great. However, they are not really ideal at all. Just about none of the belts that are supposed to be parallel are parallel, and the ones that aren't parallel are really not parallel. And that causes issues with differing belt tensions as the carriage moves back and forth, and the result of that is you actually get the whole gantry to skew slightly depending on where the X carriage is. And that is not something that's ideal, especially if you need dimensionally accurate large prints. And that is something that I will be fixing pretty much immediately. Now the other bad thing, also not that great, is that while the power supply brick does come completely pre-assembled, the wiring inside is a bit iffy. Not only are the wires just screwed directly into the screw terminals, but they only had about a 1/4 inch of wire stripped, and that was just kind of crammed in and then screwed down, so really not that secure. So I went ahead and I crimped on my own crimp connectors to all those wires, redid all that stuff so it looks much nicer and it is much safer now. I'm much more comfortable leaving this guy running when nobody's around. And in addition to that, the wire that they use is typical Chinese wire. It says it's 16 gauge. In reality, it's closer to 18 gauge. As you can see, it is nowhere near what it should be as far as thickness, but I just went ahead and replaced that wire. So overall, my thoughts on this printer. First of all, it's $280. Keep that in mind. You are not going to get a printer this big for anywhere near that cheap unless you, I don't know, do some black magic or something. It is a really good deal, and despite those few drawbacks and those somewhat major ones, it's all stuff that can be fixed, and it's all stuff that I will be fixing. So if you are interested in this printer, stay tuned, subscribe. I'll be doing a bunch more videos where I do upgrades, like installing these guys on it, which are going to be new idlers. I'll be installing all sorts of stuff on this printer, like these guys, which are new gantry ends that are going to have new idlers on them, like these guys, which are actual proper idlers and are not just bearings inside washers. In addition to that, I'm going to be getting an E3D Volcano hot end. I might be getting an E3D Titan extruder, not sure yet. I'm going to be, fixing the whole Core XY gantry, probably going to update the firmware to the latest version of Marlin, fix wiring. I've already added the lights. I'll discuss that. I can discuss the resistors. All sorts of stuff is going to be going on. So I'm going to be hopefully getting this guy to be an ideal large-scale 3D printer for just about the same cost, if not less than the CR10S. So take that, CR10. And finally, before I wrap this video up, I just want to show off some of the prints from this guy. Now, I've only done a few so far, because I don't want to really waste too much plastic until I actually get the whole mechanics figured out and corrected, but just to show off some samples, the print quality is pretty good. Now, it does lack a bit of detail. It's kind of like rounded off, and it looks a bit over extruded in spots, but that's just kind of how these cheaper 3D printers are. They have very, very low acceleration and jerk rates to compensate for not super rigid axes, and as a result, filament likes to blob up whenever it has a sharp turn. Now, this Terminator skull came out a bit better, but there's still some spots where it could be improved. Don't mind this guy, I actually broke that off by accident. But I mean, on smaller structures, the cooling is a bit lacking, so as you can tell, there's a bit of, blobbing and artifacts. Up here, the detail is pretty good. Overall, it is definitely a good print. I would not say anything really bad about it. It's just not perfect, and another bad side about this is this print took over 2 hours to complete on the TronXY, whereas I printed one on my Eclips3D, and it was slightly over an hour, so it is quite a bit slower to print. Keep in mind, much lower price printer and much larger build area. I mean, this guy could print a skull that's scaled up like 10 times larger than this, and it would be massive and waste a ton of filament, but it would look really cool. So that's pretty much it for this review. Stay tuned because I'm going to be doing a ton of upgrades on this guy. And once I get this printer fully upgraded, I will be doing my final review. And that final review will take into account the final cost, the amount of time and effort that goes into getting the printer to where it is, and then the final result, of course, how well that final printer works. Because if you buy a printer like this, you should expect to do quite a bit of upgrades on your own. It will work out of the box. As you can see, it is working. However, it is not ideal, and there is so much potential that is just untapped at the moment. So I'm going to be looking into all that stuff. So thank you guys for watching. Again, if you're interested, check out the link below. You can pick one up for yourself. So overall, I would highly recommend this printer. I would say only purchase it if you have a little bit of, hobby DIY kind of tinkering experience, because you probably will want to do a bunch of these upgrades that I'm going to do on it. You probably will want to crack open that power supply, just check, make sure everything's in order. It would work as is, but it just makes me feel a bit more comfortable knowing everything is crimped properly. Definitely a bit of a safer way to go that way. But regardless, for 270 bucks, it really can't be beat. I would say there is almost zero reason to get the CR10 over this guy when the CR10 costs $80 more. But, you know, it's a matter of personal preference. I, of course, like Core XY designs better. I just think they're much cleaner. But other people may like the CR10 and the Prusa style printers better. So, you know, whatever floats your boat. If you want to spend 80 bucks more, go for it. But personally, I'd say get this guy. So that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you later.